Moving on to laughter then, we've touched on it a bit there with you saying about your passion to be a stand-up comedian. So how did that just pop into your head when you started doing your life coaching? Was that something that had always been in the back of your mind?
It had, but not to the point. More in that I loved watching it. I mean, as a kid, I would always be watching it. I had Video Plus to set the video for Whose Line Is It Anyway and stuff like that. And I've always respected them. I've always thought, wow, to be able to make a room full of people laugh, I think is just brilliant. However, now on reflection, I'm like, does that come from external validation, or is it because I like to give the gift of laughter? I'm telling myself I like to give people the gift of laughter.
Yeah.
Which I do, actually, because I love being in the audience. I love to laugh.
Yeah.
And I've now got that song in my head from, it's Mary Poppins, isn't it? And so, yeah, well, I suppose it did just fall in. I'd always kind of thought of it. I think I'd seen, there was something else that had happened. There was a course I'd seen. That was it, Feeling Funny Mums, and it was for mums who'd had postnatal mental health issues. I thought, oh, that was great. Then it involved having to get to Liverpool, and it was like, again, it was, I suppose, me putting my own blocks in the way.
Yeah.
Equally, divine timing, it wasn't the right timing, because then I wouldn't have done Jane's course and wouldn't have met all of you lots.
Yeah.
I always loved it. And then, again, going back to visions, I did have, when I first started at my proper job, there was a Bruce Springsteen concert there, and I was stood kind of to the side of in the exec boxes to the side of the stage, and I just remember thinking, look at that, there were 50,000 people just in awe of this man, and I just thought, wow, I thought that is, I just loved it. But then I sort of laughed at myself, because I was like, well, you can't sing a note, so you're never going to be Bruce Springsteen.
Yeah.
And then I kind of get it now. I'm like, oh, right, the comedy. I'm not saying, I mean, who knows? I'd love to get to sell out arena tour.
Yeah, well, even when you do some of the bigger gigs, right, where there's 100, 150 people, it is a real buzz, isn't it?
Exactly. But I always remember that moment, and I look back on that now, I'm like, right, that was one of those moments where you're in something and you are somewhere, and it has like a meaning. But a lot of the time with these universal messages, you don't know until after.
No, it's only when you get to the later point that you go,
exactly.
That makes sense now.
Like I always wonder, well, is comedy, because I am going to go on and on and on. As you know, I want to be famous enough to be on Strictly.
Yeah, that's your end goal, isn't it?
That is the goal. In fact, there's a question later, isn't there, about success. Success is Strictly.
Right. Love that.
But then I think I'm just in, where will it take me? So like I said, it's not necessarily that I have to be on stage. Yeah, it could go anywhere.
Mm. So was laughter important to you growing up then? Were you a funny person?
Obviously.
As a child, obviously, yeah.
I like to think so.
Yeah.
I was, yeah. My brother is one of the funniest people I know. Like my best friends, just, hilarious. Yeah, we were always laughing. Although there's this one girl at school I just couldn't get on with. And it took me ages to realise she had no sense of humour.
Right.
Nothing.
Void. Yeah.
Void. She wasn't a bad person. And then I saw her years later at a wedding. And, as a grown-up, I was like, oh, okay, try and chat. And I thought, no, nothing.
Still the same?
Nothing.
Yeah.
Yeah, really weird. And that fact, because her dad, I always really liked her dad because he was hilarious.
Well, that's unusual, because normally you pick up, don't you, from your family?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because that's something that I think we've both discovered perhaps through comedy, is that most comedians are a little bit crazy.
A little bit. I think I've been keeping a lid on it so far.
Yeah. But I think maybe that comes back to, if we're going woo-woo, the inner child stuff.
Yeah. What I just learnt on Tuesday in therapy, the inner child there's 4 elements. I'm actually saying 5 here, aren't I? It's 4. I can count to 4. One of them is like the funny child.
Yeah.
Or like fun child. And I think, yeah.
Because I think we're just suppressed, aren't we? I mean, there's one thing, like when I teach public speaking, it's the second biggest fear after death. But is it any surprise that as kids grow up, they're told to sit down and shut up?
Exactly.
So then, why are we surprised that then they're scared to actually express themselves?
Absolutely.
So I think we've really got to try and nurture that playful side, because we lose it so quickly, don't we?
Yeah, massively. It's and like what I said before, anything, if you're like the little kid who loves, I mean, I used to make spells and, I loved it. But when it's kind of quashed out of you, whether it's by critical parent, whether it's by society, it's such a shame. I think kids, it's really hard for children these days.
Yeah.
Really hard.
It's very tough, isn't it?
Keeps me awake at night.
Yeah. Well, I think we're both lucky enough to have grown up without social media,
Yeah.
without camera phones.
Yeah.
So even like, you know, I was bullied, but at least the bullying stopped when I went
Yeah, when
home.
you got home.
Didn't carry on
Yeah.
on social media with
Yeah.
messages, and it's just such an immense pressure, isn't it?
Yeah.
Everything's very visual and how you
Yeah.
look rather than what you can add value to.
Exactly. And what everybody else has got. Look
Yeah.
at what everyone else has got.
Yeah.
That's not good.
No, comparison is the thief of joy.
It
as they say.
is. It is.
Yeah.
So yes, and yeah, like laughter. I suppose in again social media, you know, you can. There's so much on there that is hilarious. But equally, it sends you a bit under, doesn't it, if you've been scrolling?
Yeah.
Yeah. No, laughter's, and you know, our family. If anything awful happens, you know, we still make. I mean, we make some dreadful jokes.
Gallows humour.
Gallows humour.
Yeah.
Massively.
But I think that is, I don't know if it's a British thing actually, because I'm friends with Australian comedians and see like a lot of American comedy, and I think it is a bit of a uniquely British thing
Is
to
it?
have the dark humour
Okay.
about. I don't know what you think. I'll ask you that.
I've just always. I don't know. I do now wonder if it's unhealed trauma.
Yeah. Well, comedy is tragedy plus time.
Exactly.
So I was going to say, when you were in the depths of your despair, if I can call it that, did laughter help you out of that? Could you get to a point where you could laugh again? Had you stopped laughing?
Had I stopped laughing? Good point. Probably.
Mm.
Yeah. That's a really good question. Had I stopped laughing? Probably more. I don't think it was ever a thought of I've not laughed for 4 days.
Yeah.
But on reflection, yeah, I guess I'd stopped laughing.
Yeah. So what was the path out of that then? Was it once you'd started the coaching and
Yeah,
got
the woo-woo.
back in tune
was
with
the
yourself, it
woo-woo.
unlocked it?
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah. Although I will also say, though, it was also proper medication at the time as well, because it was so awful. Yeah, I had a toddler, a 9-week-old baby, no sleep, and I was just an absolute mess.
Yeah.
And like to the point where I was throwing up in the mornings because of anxiety.
Yeah.
Couldn't sleep, needed to sleep. Oh, it was horrific.
Mm.
Yeah, I'm trying to think then, when did I laugh again? I don't know.
Yeah. It's an
It was just a
interesting
slow
question.
and steady
A slow-
progress out of it. But like I said, I definitely needed the medication to start to get me out of that loop.
Yeah.
And
so-
while I am all about natural healing, there is sometimes a place for you need the drugs.
Yeah, well, sometimes it is a chemical imbalance, isn't
Exactly.
it? And there's no amount of journaling that's going to help that, is there? A lot of people go, oh, I've got anxiety. Have you tried journaling?
Have you tried journaling?
Have you tried going for a walk?
Yeah, we tried a gratitude.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. I
Yes,
have.
I'm really grateful that my mental health is dog shit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's
So-
awful when you're in it. It's so awful. And you can try and tell yourself, this too shall pass. But like you say, it's that chemical imbalance, and the things that your brain is telling you are just, again, I can't think of the words, it's just awful.
Mm.
And then when you feel fine and you're out of it, you think, gosh, God, what was that about? I'm fine. I need to tell myself that I can just get out of it and it will pass.
Yeah.
And oh gosh, but you're in another place.
Yeah. You can't, when you're in that sort of depths, you do need all the help in the world, don't you, to
Yeah,
get
absolutely.
out of it.
Yeah. But then I would say, is it like a sort of a marker point over the years? Was it when I went to homeopath, first of all, it said frequency, intensity, and duration. And I think actually, like I said, on reflection, since I first had my meltdown, frequency is obviously a lot less. Intensity took a while to come right down, and duration, probably only really recently, if things spark the anxiety. Yeah, it's only just probably now that the duration is shorter.
Mm.
It takes years.
Yeah.
And I think it's never going to go.
No.
It's how we manage it, and then how we manage, again, which is where the woo-woo comes in, because it's not not trying to fortune tell all the bad stuff and trying to get back to being factual.
Yeah, well, they say, I think anxiety is imagining the future constantly, isn't it?
Yeah,
Or
and depression's questioning the past, isn't
yeah,
it?
yeah, and the worst things that can happen.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, in terms of your comedy then, how did you feel the first time you performed stand-up?
So I was actually okay.
Yeah.
And I look back now and I think, you're Wally!
Yeah, because you just did it for an event, didn't you? It wasn't like a gig or a comedy club, it was...
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
it was, she called it the Upstanding Citizens Bureau,
Oh, right.
Harriet Dyer's
Yeah.
event. And yeah, I just had 5 minutes in the middle. It was great. But then I hadn't done I look back now, it was not like a properly written set. It was just sort of all the things we'd kind of learn, and then all the stuff I'd put together.
Yeah.
And then I think then it was the next year actually, then I wrote the set properly. And then I was more nervous. We were there together. It was Jam Street.
Jam Street, yeah.
Yes.
That was your first one, yeah.
Yeah. Well, that was the first one after
that one. Yeah.
After the first one.
Yeah.
Yeah. Second
one.
call it.
We're so good at maths, aren't we? It's a good job
in
we're
the
funny.
comedy business. Yeah, again, comedy. Like, I wonder, is it because it's that sort of like, look at me thing. I'm no good at maths at school, but I'm really funny.
Yeah.
And I was really nervous for that one. And I remember sat there and I just went, I can't remember any of it. I can't remember myself. I just can't remember it. And again, you look back and you think, I didn't need to put that much pressure on yourself. You were doing it. You were there.
Yeah, that is something. Yeah, because it's like your mind goes. It's like I've literally forgotten every word I've ever been taught. Not just my set, but words.
Yeah, any words. Yeah.
But then you get up and then I guess it just comes out and a switch comes on, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Of what you can do.
Yeah.
But yeah,
this is exactly where I'm meant to be. That's one of my mantras.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah.
And especially we do put a lot of pressure on ourselves, don't we?
So much.
I think I have to remind myself that comedy's meant to be fun.
Yes.
Because you can get very caught up in the whole professionalism of it,
Yeah.
and not necessarily saying we're going to be household names in comedy. We're doing it because
Whoa.
Strictly, yeah, obviously, but we're doing it because it's meant to be fun and it gives us joy and laughter.
Exactly.
And healing,
and it's releasing the creativity, it's releasing whatever's stagnant in there that helps with the happiness. But it is. But again, that comes from wanting to be so good at stuff.
Yeah.
Doesn't it? And if you want to do something, we want to do it properly.
Yeah. Well, that's what I think. I've said it a few times that comedy is probably one of the few things you can only learn by doing it.
Yes.
In front of people.
Yes.
Like you can practice all you want at home, but until you stood in front of an audience, that's not actually doing it, and you are going to be crap. When you start, aren't you? There's going to be days where it just doesn't land, or you've got to deal with hecklers or audience members, but you've just got to get better at it by doing it. Yeah. And I think that's also what I love about it.
But crap, when you say crap, like crap compared to who? No, you're not. You're not crap. You're learning. And it's great that you're even up there and doing it. Yeah.
Reframe, you see.
Reframe.
Telling you're a life coach.
Yeah.
We're getting free coaching here.
We could do a live coaching session.
Yeah.
That did remind me before you were saying about, that comedy is supposed to be fun. And so then I can get a bit in my head of, but I want to be, I want to be on Strictly, so I want to be doing these gigs. But, real life is, I've got 74 children and husbands, dogs, just the one husband, just the one dog, and and that's where I come back to divine timing will mean that the gigs I can do, and if I can't, so I used to really stress about that. I would stress then, I've let them. I mean, you were at a gig when I had to just say family emergency, I cannot get there tonight, and I just you feel awful. I've let them down. I'm letting the audience down. I'm letting my fellow comedians down. Again, that's where that the inner critic, my self-talk has really changed. That's been one of the huge changes.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about your inner critic, because obviously you said that's what was in your voice, it was in your head at the dark times. So you obviously read at the Riot Act now.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Well, like comedy, you give it a character, you give it a name, and you just tell it to be quiet. Yeah. Yeah.
And that works for you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Seems to.
Yeah, I can try it myself. Actually.
Do.
Yeah. So I'm very interested to ask you this. Okay. Have you got a favourite joke?
I have, and this is one from when I was really little. It's a several-parter, which I now learn is that I suppose it's the callback at the end. But this is what I think is really clever about humour, or about comedy, about what makes people laugh. And so it's the one about how do you fit 4 elephants in a Mini. Well, 2 in the front, 2 in the back. That in itself quite funny. Because and then it's how do you know if there's an elephant in your fridge? Well, there's footprints in the butter. And then the joke goes on to how do you know if there's 2 elephants, there's 2 footprints, 3 footprints. How do you know if there's 4 elephants in your fridge? There's a Mini on your driveway.
I love that.
I do.
Yeah, it's funny. I think most people have told jokes that they remember from their childhood.
Yes.
Because they somehow lodge in your mind more, don't they?
Yeah.
And I think those funny little silly jokes that you don't really get them now, do you?
No, you don't. No, and so I was talking about this with my eldest. She's now 14, and we used to love watching. Do you remember Giggle Biz?
Yeah.
So I mean, I think that is some classic humour.
Great stuff.
It was, because our dog was in the field. He'd been chasing this hare, and then he'd come away from the hare, and then he was just wandering around, and the hare was behind him. You're like, Wally. And it was like we're searching for the rare panda, and he'd be like, stood like a light bulb.
Rapids Johnson.
Johnson, yeah. And do you remember Itchy Tights when he was... Like, I love simple humour.
Yeah, I've got to give it up for CBeebies and CBBC for actually producing content that parents enjoyed as well. Like Horrible Histories.
Oh, they've got some of their writers, are really famous. Well, they write other
a lot
BBC.
of them have gone on to Ghosts, haven't they? And the actors in there as well. So, yeah absolutely gold.
It is. So, I love simple humour. And then now, like, my little boy has a joke book. And there's the one I've posted it before on Pancake Day about, waiter, will my pancake be long? No, it'll be round.
Classic. Love
exactly.
it.